I am far from a morning person, as is quite often the case with really smart people. And when I was, I think around 11 or so, I bought my first computer and learned how to program in beginner's applied symbolic instruction code basic, which no one over 12 is supposed to use, but I ended up using for turned into Visual Basic, ASP.NET, anyway. So when I got this computer, I used to get up early and I wrote screensavers, I wrote paint programs, I wrote adventure stories, I wrote top-down adventure Dungeons and Dragons style games. I just loved it. And there were times when I would forge my mom's signature. I can confess now, after all these years, 40 years, I would forge my mom's signature so I could stay home and work on computer programming. Now I ended up being a software entrepreneur. So it turns out I was actually getting my real education at home and not showing up to school. And it was great. It was like, I have very, very fond memories of that. Turns out I'm not alone in skipping school. Almost 30% of public school teachers are chronically skipping classes, according to a study that recently came out from the Thomas B. Fordham Institute, an education policy nonprofit think tank. So they found that over 28% of public school educators miss 11 or more school days each year. Public school teachers are 3 times more likely than their charter school counterparts to take more than 10 days a year off school for personal or health-related reasons. The average teacher takes 8 days off per year. This is more than twice the 3.5 days missed by the average employee across industries nationwide. Now, the union says, well, if you're a teacher, you're around a bunch of kids get ill, you're going to get ill, but teachers employed by unionized charter schools were 2 times as likely as their peers to miss more than 10 days of school a year, the report revealed. Listen, I've done call-in shows occasionally with raging headaches, and that's because I love what I do. I think it's important for the world, and a man's got to eat. So we all know that there's times when you just can't go to work or to school, and there's times when you can, and then there's those times in the middle. So it's this tipping point that really matters. So David Griffith, the author of the study, said, when in doubt, the simplest explanation is usually the correct one. And the simplest explanation for the teacher chronic absenteeism gap between charter and traditional public schools is that the latter are usually subject to collective bargaining agreements that are extremely generous when it comes to the amount of sick and personal leave that teachers are guaranteed. So Hawaiian teachers get 18 paid sick leave days out of their 180-day school year. Boy, that's like 10% of your job. You can just stay home. Nearly 4/5 of Hawaiian teachers take advantage of at least 10 of those days. Now, this is fairly important. So Griffith, the author, says there's a very direct link between teacher attendance and student achievement. So if teachers are missing more than 2 weeks of school, which is how teacher chronic absenteeism is defined, then students are losing about 2 weeks of education, and that's incredibly damaging to their long-term prospects. So, yeah, that's important. I mean, I think we all knew that when the substitute teacher showed up that it was going to be a gimme day. It was going to be a doodles and spitballs kind of day. It was going to be a day, fundamentally, of me working on my endless Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. And this is just another example of how collective bargaining, government schools, and so on are there for the convenience of the teachers. They're not there for the education or edification of the children. The big problem with education, someone's going to have to address this at some point. I've certainly done my part. At some point, someone's going to have to address the terrible family environments that these kids are experiencing. Someone's going to have to start confronting these parents. And what we do, of course, is we have social structures, particularly the welfare state and so on, that promote terrible family lives. We have divorce-friendly courts. We have, pay women to leave their families, which is sort of like paying you to quit a job you don't like and then expecting you to stay on. So we end up in these situations where these families get wrecked and destroyed, these single mom households, and this is all very, very bad for concentration, for children doing well in school, for having time to prepare for tests. And, single moms, I mean, if they're on welfare, they just get lazy and inert, total Jabba the Hutt style. Or if they're working, then they just don't really have much time to help their kids with their homework or keep up. I mean, I remember taking a note home from school to my mom. She had to sign for some school trip, and she really had no clue what grade I was even in. Because, this back when she was working, she was busy and all. So we've got these social institutions that create these terrible, horrible family environments. And then what happens is the kids do badly, and part of it's their own choice and part of it is their environment. But nobody, of course, has any incentive at the moment to deal with volatile, obstructionist, aggressive parents who might make your life difficult if you confront their bad parenting. And so what happens is the teachers detach and want to stay home, and the parents get off scot-free. The kids don't want to show up, and nothing really fundamentally gets solved. And it's all of this Band-Aid on a sucking chest wound of social decay that keeps occurring in these kinds of situations. And we fix it. We will fix it one day. But what we'll have to do is we'll have to really rediscover our love for our children and accept nothing but the best for them. And until then, well, things are just going to keep getting worse, and fewer and fewer people are going to end up